Recording for this event. I'm letting you know that I'm Rachel Dalton, the recruiter here at TAMS, Dr. Eric Gruber, who will be presenting on academics, and Dr. Jim Duban, who will be presenting on research. Sorry about that, guys. I did not set the record. And we're going to go through a presentation here. So we'll talk about TAMS and the overview on that for just a brief moment, and then we'll get into academics and research, how and why. And if you have questions, please present those questions in the comments section where you can, where we can have a chat. So what is TAMS? TAMS is an early college admission program that allows for students who are coming out of their junior and senior high school years, typically the juniors and seniors, to come here and gain their high school diploma by the end of the 2 years, as well as up to 60 to 70 college course credit hours. And Dr. Gruber will go into that just a little bit more. This is a residential program, so the students do live on campus for that 2 years. Very important to note, I do have parents call, and some of them are local and they would like for their students to still attend, but that is part of the package deal. They do live on campus and they live in one hall. It's McConnell Hall. And it's a very cool place to be. The students really do very well living with one another for the most part. And I think that element of it for them to live together is part of the success of the program as well. It's a very unique program. It's one of the only programs like this in the state. And we have kind of touted ourselves as being, you know, one of the best and only in the nation. That's kind of how we are. There are other sister programs that are comparable throughout the nation, but I think none is as good as probably what we've got to present here today. So if you take a look at high school students, they typically will, you know, live at home. They have a particular schedule where they have to be at school all day long. Family takes care of them. And the teachers are there as overseers. When they come here to TAMS, they really move into more of that broader base independence where they can live in the residence hall. They time block their time. We really give them that independence where they become responsible for academics, but we also have the reliance of the program and the individuals who are administrative here that help to look out for the students. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, that we are here for the student success, and then the students are also able to lean on us for that, and for many of the academic as well as supportive and just a wellness and health resources. Their academic opportunities, they can gain up to 72 hours of college credit. There's 5 tracks, which are all STEM focused, and there's a mentored research component. They have, of course, the academic support component here, and the counselors. Again, Dr. Gruber is going to talk about this and talk about the advising that they receive. We also have other support systems in place. They even have the students have a club that they help empower one another. They help tutor and that sort of thing. So lots of opportunities for the students while they're here. Because we don't rank the students are not in competition so much as they are there to lift one another up. Okay, away we go, Dr. Gruber.
Okay.
All right.
Welcome everyone, and okay, thank you. Thank you for being with us tonight. My job here at TAMS is the Associate Dean, and that job has evolved to include admissions now. So you'll be communicating with Dr. Jones, who is our Assistant Dean of Admissions, or myself, or with Rachel about admissions, and then I also cover academics.
Padma
The
is now joining.
The most important thing about TAMS that I think I like to inform parents about is that all of the courses at TAMS are taught by UNT faculty. This is not a dual credit program. This is not come and take some courses taught by high school faculty and then go home at night. As Rachel mentioned, this is a residential program, and your students drop out of high school. They withdraw from high school at the end of their sophomore year, and they enter TAMS basically at what would be their junior year. There are exceptions to that. We've had students younger than that admitted to TAMS, and those students have done very well, but generally they are high school sophomores when they leave high school. We have 5 tracks, and as our dean, Dr. De Oliveira, talks about the intersection of STEM and the arts, we have our traditional science program, which and I encourage you to go to our website and read more about these tracks, but the traditional science program is the original TAMS curriculum that is primarily focused on a broad-based theory of ideas in biology, chemistry, and physics, and of course math thrown in there as well. And that's usually the track that our students interested in medical careers follow. We also have a computer science track that involves programming. I believe it's C++ that students studied as a part of the program. But students also get into networking and local area networks and things like that. We have 3 new tracks this year that we introduced. The music track is for students who are musically oriented, but still interested a little bit in how STEM affects the music industry, if you will. We have our first program, the first PhD program in the country was started this year at the UNT Health Science Center in music health. And it's for people who play instruments, vocals, all of that sort of stuff. And it's all about protecting the health of musicians and vocalists. So if that's something that a student is interested in, they can pursue music at TAMS and then move into that field. The visual arts and design track focuses on design mainly. Obviously, there's an art component to that. Students take a variety of art and design classes as a part of that track. And some of our students who are in the visual arts and design track actually want to go into a STEM field as a designer. And so they've chosen this because they have an affinity for art, or they've enjoyed art in high school, but they still like the intersection with STEM. Finally, the media arts track is exactly what it says. Film production, media production of all sorts. UNT has a radio station, a TV station, and the media arts students in TAMS have the ability to be involved in both of those areas. Again, you're dealing with production of all sorts and electronics. So there's still the intersection with STEM, even with the media arts program. We've talked about the college credit hours in 2 years. Rachel mentioned 60 to 70. On the screen, it says 60. We've had students leave TAMS with as many as 90 and 92 hours of college credit work. It really depends on how many hours a student takes each semester. It also includes AP credit that the students may transfer to UNT, or CLEP exams that students take while enrolled. And as Rachel mentioned, students receive an advanced high school diploma once they finish the TAMS program. But the key is they receive a UNT transcript. And that's an important distinction that an ordinary high school offering dual credit can't offer students. That's a huge advantage that TAMS students have, is that when they either stay at UNT or move on to their next institution, they are taking a UNT transcript, not a TAMS high school transcript. So that's a big deal. We have a 3.0 minimum GPA, and most of our students do not have a problem maintaining a 3.0 GPA. Our average GPA last year was a 3.8. Hopefully that made some of you chuckle a little bit, because of the UNT average is about a 2.6. So TAM students and UNT students are very different. In fact, I always make a joke at our preview days, and I'll make it tonight, that UNT students hate having TAM students in their classes because the TAM students blow the curve. And so that's kind of an interesting point that I always make. Rachel mentioned that I would talk about the support services that we offer for our students. We actually have 3 academic counselors now. I notice on the slide it only says 2. We hired our 3rd one in July. And that 3rd counselor looks over the new tracks, the 3 new tracks: music, visual arts and design, and media arts. And those academic counselors communicate with professors and serve as the middlemen, if you will, between parents and the professors to ensure that students are having success in the classroom. We have a tutoring organization at TAMS, the TAMS Academic Society. So if a student is having trouble in a class, they can go online, submit a request, and usually within 24 hours, they will be assigned a tutor. Obviously, as UNT students, TAM students have access to the math and the writing labs, which are in Sage Hall, which also houses the TAMS offices. So the tutoring and the math and writing labs are available. There's also the Chemistry Resource Center that many of our students use during their first year of taking chemistry. They have very good tutors over there, I'm told. And then our last academic support service, if you want to call it that, is that we have a full-time college advisor. Her name is Sharon Van, and she is known across the United States as the representative for TAMS students who move on from UNT and enter other institutions to pursue their baccalaureate or graduate degrees. Sharon attends all sorts of conferences. She communicates with college representatives. She maintains a parent and a student Facebook page. So if your students come to TAMS, she will be able to add you to the parent group so that you have an idea of college visits or information that a parent might need to help their student make a good choice in either staying at UNT or moving on to another institution. So those are just some of the academic services we offer to TAMS students. But again, I want to stress that TAMS students are UNT students. So anything that a UNT student has access to, a TAMS student has as well. At this point, I want to turn it over to Dr. Jim DeBan, who is our Associate Dean for Research and Nationally Competitive Scholarships. Dr. DeBan.
Thank you, Dr. Gruber. Welcome to this event, and we're very, very happy that you've tuned in. And what I'd like to do is, in turn, provide an overview of the research opportunities and what grows out of those in TAMS. Now, as many of you may know, there's actually a TAMS RO, that is research organization. And those are seasoned students in TAMS. That means second year. And they are very much committed to fostering research opportunities for all TAMS students, as we in the administration are as well. Now, what I'd like to do in offering an overview of research is to begin with, well, let's just call it a philosophy of research for incoming students. As many of you know, research today is a prerequisite, virtually a prerequisite, for admission to medical school, for preemptive fellowship offers from major universities by the time a student has completed the senior year of college and wants to go on to earn the combined master's and PhD. Research figures enormously in a number of funding scenarios. And I refer to that as the pragmatic dimension of research. What I like to do is to start off by emphasizing, as I do to the students when I address them, the inherent value of research. And I remind the students that what research is literally a researching of something in order to contribute new knowledge to one's field of study, new perspectives, new connections, new discoveries, and so on. And that I advise them first and foremost to look at this as an adventure in the world of taking one's field of study from the status quo of where it is now to where it needs to be 5 to 10 years from now, usually working on a PI's research team to achieve that goal, and eventually being charged with enough responsibility to make toward that common goal a significant contribution, not just to the research team, but inherently to the field of knowledge itself. And that is why a good number of TAM students eventually end up earning co-authorship distinction on the articles that their professors publish. And it's not simply a courtesy on the part of the professor, it is a definite acknowledgement of the contribution that a student has made. And that this is a really big event for students to work up to that point where, as young as they are, they now have a segment on their resume called publications. But as I always remind them, what that signifies is that they have made a contribution to the world of science. And it's a contribution that will be there forever and that others will have to encounter by way of going beyond what they have done. Now, I also stress to students that the main advantage to working in somebody's lab is that one acquires a professional methodology, and that we want, of course, students to distinguish themselves in the classroom, and we want them to master the reading that they are assigned in a conventional classroom. But it is seldom the case that based strictly on that reading, that they will be able to develop a methodology in isolation from that practiced by their principal investigator. So it's not, as you know, it's not that they're going to stick to that methodology for the rest of their lives. As they move on, as they're in graduate school, they'll encounter new methodologies. But what they're really doing is participating in what one professor in literary studies, Frederick Cruz, has called the discipline of the discipline. And they're learning what it means to have a disciplined approach to, and I like the British pronunciation of this word, a disciplined approach to inquiry. And this is a huge advantage. And whatever methodology they end up using in the future, whether it's a combination of what has come before with that which is now, they understand the discipline that it takes to commit oneself to the world of inquiry and to move forward productively. They learn as well, and this falls for me under the inherent virtues of the research experience in isolation from the pragmatic values, that is to say the financial values. They learn how to deal with failure. As many of you know, and I know that the parents out there, a good number of you are either professors or STEM investigators in one way or another, as many of you know, that often one encounters obstacles in the world of research, and then it becomes the intellectual challenge of, well, how do we deal with this? Where do we go from here? And at this young age, for them to learn that lesson, I think is invaluable, because it leaves them positioned for the challenges of adulthood generally, not just in the lab, but the challenges of confronting obstacles along the path of what we call life. It teaches them as well the value of serendipity, and what I stress to them, and what Louis Pasteur ages ago pointed out was, well, it's not entirely serendipity, because chance favors, as he said, the prepared mind. And that once they commit themselves to an endeavor and they're working hard on it, then it may well chance that they come across something that's really unexpected and ends up being very productive. And before moving on to talking about nationally competitive scholarships, let me say that perhaps the most invaluable part of the research endeavor for those students who choose to engage in it is the social dimension. As many of you know, being on a team and being in a lab means being a social creature, and that the most successful scientists whom I know on campus and about whom I have read pretty much admit that they wouldn't be who either they are today or what they eventually became had it not been for the social interaction and the capacity to work with others and to share ideas, and while making an individual contribution to benefit from dialogue with one's colleagues, including other students, be those undergraduates, graduate students, postdocs, or the principal investigator, him or herself. So that social interaction is a huge, huge advantage, and we stress that. Now, no professor on this campus has any obligation to take either a TAMS student or a conventional UNT undergraduate into his or her lab. As I think back 40 years in the past, research was pretty much the domain back then of course, the professors, but back then mainly graduate students. It was rare for undergraduates to be in a lab 40 years ago. Today, because of research-based undergraduate education, more and more professors are willing to meet students who are interested in their lab and to consider taking them in. What I advise students to do is, if they wish to enter a research environment, to study, to get online, go to the department of their current passion, whether that's in the field of engineering or the physical sciences, and click on faculty and click on faculty profiles and see what students are what the faculty members are researching. And then when they arrive on campus, to see when the professor's office hours are, and to visit those office hours, and to meet the faculty member, perhaps already to have read one or two recent publications of the faculty member, so that if they mention that they have learned something new because of a professor's recent publication, something that has convinced them that this is the kind of lab that they really wish to be in, that they are prepared to answer questions about the publication that they evoke. You will find that among the students, there is sometimes a different outlook on how to get into a lab. And those students say, well, just send out 20 emails to different professors expressing an interest in being in their lab. And I have, through observation, concluded that that is a far less productive avenue to pursue. If somebody shows up at one's door, has done some reading and wants to engage in dialogue, I think that's a far more compelling reason for a professor to want to entertain the prospect of taking that student in. If your children are selected to be in TAMS, what you will find is that there are established professors who are known for having students enter their labs, but we also are recruiting a huge number of new professors every year throughout the university. And I know for a fact, because I've been meeting a good number of them over the past 3 years, that those of them who are in STEM have heard of TAMS, and they are very interested in having TAMS students interview with them to become members of their lab. So they should take advice from those students who have been here, but they should also look into new recruits on the faculty. And I think they'll be very, very pleasantly surprised. Now, to help students conduct research within TAMS, we have various summer scholarships and a year-long scholarship that's called the undergrad. Let me deal with that one first. The Undergraduate Research Fellowship, otherwise the URF. And what the URF does is, during a student's current academic year, he or she enters into covenant, as it were, with a faculty member to conduct formal research during the next academic year. Now, that doesn't mean that the student is prohibited from conducting research, let's say, in the first year of TAMS, but the Undergraduate Research Fellowship pretty much seals the deal for the following academic year. And that is a $500 scholarship that allows students to be an undergraduate research fellow in May of 2021, for those students who are on campus this year already, present a poster at Scholars Day, our big event, where we have undergraduate researchers presenting posters. And the next morning they wake up and there's $500 in their student account that was not there the day before. And more students are taking advantage of this, putting it on their resumes, and it's very nice to be an undergraduate research fellow. Now, that award is completely consistent with the TAMS Summer Scholarship. Now, what the TAMS Summer Scholarship does for students who have entered in their first year and they're feeling their way into a research environment, hopefully locating one, and then we have a competition that allows a good number, it's competitive, I'm not saying all, but a good number of TAMS students to merit a $4,000 scholarship to meet most of the expenses of participating in the 10-week summer session. And they stay on campus, and during the 10-week summer session, it's not uncommon for researchers who are earning that $4,000 scholarship, because it covers most of all, of course, tuition, room, board, and so on. So they have liberated time since they do not have to work for a summer salary. What that scholarship is doing is subsidizing their needs, and therefore it's not uncommon for TAMS Summer Scholarship participants to work in a lab 35 to 45 hours per week, and to be highly productive during that time. All the while they are living in McConnell Hall, and they are eating in the cafeterias, and therefore they don't have to go shopping for food, they don't have to do dishes. So basically what the scholarship is doing is buying them the time to commit themselves fully to the world of research, if they have managed to get a placement in a research lab during their first year, or just for the summer. Now, that's the conventional TAMS research scholarship. Again, that's for $4,000. And then 3 years ago, we instituted an experiment which has been immensely successful, and it's called the Early Research Scholarship. And what the Early Research Scholarship does is to take a maximum of 10 incoming first-year TAMS students. They must have been admitted to TAMS. There's no applying for this at the same time as they apply to TAMS. Once a student is admitted, including now on the new rolling basis of admission, that then they will receive a notice that they are now eligible to apply for an early research scholarship. And the student makes application, and I go over very closely the application dossier of that student. They have to fill out a separate application for the early research experience, and based on a number of considerations, TAMS will admit only 10. We've worked our way up from 6 now to 10 students. It's absolutely essential to do this with as early as possible, because the students don't end up by magic in labs. Since they're not on campus, we have to locate professors who are willing to interview the students. And the student has to be willing to travel to campus We do not accept Skype interviews or any other electronic medium of interview. The student must travel to campus, must be interviewed first by my office, and then on the basis of that interview, the recommendation will go forward either that this student is going to receive an invitation to be an early research scholar, but that also implies that I've been able to locate a professor in the field in which the student has expressed an interest in conducting research, not a professor who's willing to take that student in, but a professor who is willing to interview that student to see if he or she feels that that student would be compatible at this very young age and early stage of their careers with being in that professor's lab. And let me just conclude by saying that the earlier somebody begins research, the more continuity of research they will accrue. And these days, in order to compete in such nationally competitive scholarships as the Barry M. Goldwater Scholarship Competition, the Regeneron Competition, in order to be a player in those, these organizations look for continuity of research, not just the occasional summer of research, but how many contiguous semesters of research has a student accrued, and what have they accomplished? And of course, the more semesters that they've conducted research, the more comprehensive will be the letter of recommendation from the PI. So the comprehensive letter of recommendation goes hand in hand, of course, with the consecutive number of semesters that a student has conducted research. And finally, as I advise students that continuity of research will come into play during their senior year of college, when they apply for National Science Foundation graduate research fellowships to bring $130,000 to the graduate school of their choice, to Hertz Foundation scholarships, which will subsidize a student for 4 to 5 years, all expenses paid. That continuity of research figures now in Rhodes Scholarship Competition, in Marshall Scholarship Competition, in Gates Cambridge Scholarship Competition. And finally, therefore, that is a very good reason why a student who starts out conducting research in his or her first semester of TAMS should well consider taking advantage of the TAMS to Eagle Scholarship, which would provide just about all, if not all, financial subsidy for a student to choose to remain at the University of North Texas, should they wish to do that, for a continuity of a 4-year baccalaureate and 4 years of contiguous research in a lab. And it has not been uncommon for our some of our TAM students to earn recognition in anywhere from 5 to 13 or more co-authorships with their research mentors. So that in sum is an overview of what I like to think of as the ideal reasons for engaging in research, the quest for new knowledge, and that leads then to what follows in terms of the very pragmatic outcomes of having engaged in that mode of inquiry. Thank you, and I'm going to turn this back to Rachel.
All righty. Well, thank you very much. And now, thank you very much, Dr. Dubin and Dr. Gruber, both of you. We'll now flip this over to take a look at if you all have some of the questions that I know some of you will have. Give me just a quick moment to jump on to Q&A here. And conversation. Okay, all right. So if you have questions, if you could please go into the meeting chat option and type in your questions at this time. And I'm going to enter full screen so we can see those questions. It doesn't like me very much here. And I will say hello to you all here. Well, what did I just do?
Where did that come from?
I just hit a button. All right, give me a sec. There we go. So the question is, and if you want me to read it out, I can, or we can.
I can tell you that the coursework that students complete at TAMS is the equivalent of courses that UNT students complete. So students take honors biology, honors chemistry, pre-calculus, calculus, all the math courses, physics, calculus-based physics. So the coursework is university coursework. As I said in my presentation, this is not dual credit. This is not AP courses. This is university coursework. In terms of do students get enough sleep, I think that depends on who you talk to. The students themselves say they get enough sleep. I think most of them get anywhere from 5 to 7 hours a night, from what they've told me in my 5 years at TAMS. Some of you may think that's not enough, but they go through adjustment periods and peak times of studying.
I'm just gonna interrupt really quick here. Some of you may not have seen the question, and the question was, how rigorous is the coursework, and do students get enough sleep? And that's what Dr. Gruber had just answered. Were you going to move on to the second?
Yeah, I was. The students can apply right now for admission for next year. If the student hasn't taken the SAT or the ACT, they need to do that as quickly as possible. But the application has been open, I believe, since August 15th or August 1st. And we are accepting applications and receiving applications every day. We don't have a preference over of ACT over SAT, regardless of track. We just want good students who have good foundations academically and aptitudinally. What else?
And I think another thing that that is worth mentioning too is that as part of the process of going in for submitting your application, those details after we have been able to get all of the paperwork and go through the procedure of the logistics of that, we will invite folks onto campus for an interview process. And some of you may have seen that on our website, but that's something that that does come about. You're sorry, okay, so you did not hear the answer to how early the student can apply. Students can apply, we typically take student applications during their 10th grade year for them to join us for their junior and senior year. We have, as Dr. Gruber mentioned a little while ago, we have taken some students who were just a little bit before that by 1 year. And that's not typical, but we have had students in the past that have applied during their 9th grade year.
To answer the next question, the average SAT score for students selected by TAMS is about 1440. But that's the average. As Dr. Jones, our assistant dean for admissions, always likes to describe, we have a range of SAT and ACT scores. Sometimes a student's admitted into TAMS with a 1200 SAT or a 27 ACT, but typically the averages are much higher than that. To answer the next question about applicants per track, computer science, we usually don't have as many applicants for computer science, but we don't have quotas per track. We take the applicants and the students as they apply. As Rachel mentioned, we analyze their application packets and then decide on who we want to interview. And we do that regardless of the track that the student has informed us they've chosen. The next question is, how much flexibility do students have with other classes at UNT? Students are actually allowed after their first semester to take elective courses. So yes, they could take any course at UNT as long as they have the prerequisite for the course. TAMS has a curriculum, and as I mentioned, you can see those curricula on the web pages on our website. And let's see, what is the average number of hours a week a TAMS student spends on research?
During the conventional school semester, fall or spring, the average would range from, let's say, 8 to 14 hours a week, because the professors realize that the students are taking full-time loads. It's only in the summer that the expectation, both on the part of the student and the principal investigator, skyrockets to 35 to 40 plus hours per week. But during the fall and spring semesters, there are reasonable expectations.
How many students are in each class? That's a tough question. I'm answering Lu Chen's question. We have some TAMS courses or some English courses that we cap at 22 students per section, but a student may be in a biology course that has 150 students in it or 120 students in it. And in terms of the ratio of TAMS students to UNT students, I'm assuming that means per class. That really depends on the course that a TAMS student takes. We have a student who is going to be taking a neuroscience course in the spring with UNT students, and that TAMS student will be the only TAMS student in that course of, I believe there are 40 students in that class. Yes, we also evaluate students' high school GPA, SAT and ACT scores. We have teacher recommendations, counselor recommendations, and all of that is on the TAMS website under the admissions button.
And I see what percentage of TAMS students participate in faculty-led research programs. I don't have the exact percentage at my fingertips, but what I can say is that a good number, a very good number of our TAMS students participate in faculty-led research programs. But I'll also add this, that I've long believed that a student should feel well anchored in his or her conventional studies before jumping into the world of research. That a student who is confronting challenges in conventional courses might well want to delay getting involved in research and instead distinguish themselves in those classes. Now, many of our TAM students are able to do both at the same time. So again, I can say a very good number of students are involved in faculty-led research, and that those students have personally sought out those opportunities.
Students can change the track that they pursue after the first semester, but after their first semester at TAMS, they are locked into the track that they've chosen at that point. So for example, we have, I know a student who came in as a computer science track student. She's discovered the world of psychology and is now switching to the biology track starting in the spring so that she can take a psychology course as her elective. So at the end of the first semester, a student can change tracks, but that's the last time they can change a track because they do have to fulfill a curriculum and receive the TAMS diploma so that we can say they are a high school graduate. What does it mean when we say a highly competitive freshman? That means a student who has pretty much maxed out whatever math courses their high school offers, or the student has already done research on a university campus. That freshman in high school really has to have gone above and beyond and be mature to be a competitive freshman for the TAMS program because they're going to be competing with end of year sophomores, rising juniors, if you will, for TAMS spots.
Any other questions? Great questions. So I am getting ready to get all of that data pulled together. We actually just got the last two edited and will be going up onto the website where you were able to find the registration for this event. And the links for those will be there, but I'm also going to pull in the data from those folks that have signed up for this event, and I'll send it to you, send you the link in an email. So please be expecting that in the next week. Again, the other two have been edited just a couple of days ago, and I expect that those will get posted here pretty soon.
It looks like we have one last question. What main characteristics of a student does TAMS look for? We look for a student who has challenged him or herself in the classroom, has excelled in those challenges, has done community service work, has participated in science or math competitions, depending on the track that the student wants to go into, that they've participated in activities similar to those tracks. And the last question, it looks like, can we visit your facility? If you go to our webpage, you can actually have your students spend a day at TAMS and on the campus of UNT. Your student will shadow a current TAMS student and see what TAMS is like.
Yeah, we have a couple of those coming up. We've got one in November. We have a preview day that you can actually come to us in February. It's February 29th. And if you're interested in attending that, you can get registered. And again, that's off of the tams.unt.edu. And if you just jump down underneath admissions, there is a tab for visiting. And there should be lots of opportunity. There are lots of opportunities there on that page for you to get involved and come on up. If you would like to reach out to me personally, you have my email because I sent an email to you here recently, but I'm going to type it in here just for you to have. And then that way you can email me if you'd like to come up and, you know, have an extra chat with me about some of the program, then I'd be more than happy to chat with you a little bit. So. All right, well, thank you all for coming. We really appreciate your time, and yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And we appreciate it, and we will hopefully see you soon if you choose to visit us. And thanks again. I'm gonna stop recording first.